Hey, folks, I'm Roy Harmon, and this is the Hot Pursuit podcast brought to you by LeadPost, the retargeting platform built to help agencies increase revenue and improve ROI for their clients by identifying website visitors that don't convert. Learn more at leadpost.com/agency. Today, we're joined by guest Stephanie Fiteni,
Yes, that's right.
CMO at 9H Digital. And she is going to talk to us about how to develop content that converts. And that's something that people, of course, have been talking about for a while, but you can never get enough good insights on that. And Stephanie has some really great experience in this area, which I feel has given her some great insights that everybody is really going to benefit a lot from. Stephanie, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Roy. And yes, um, content has sort of become sort of one of my passions over the years. Writing was always something I loved ever since I was a kid. But I joined the industry as a programmer, so I kind of came in from the technical side. And over the years, I kind of married the two. So marrying the technology with the writing and sort of geeking out a little bit about, building funnels and, tweaking copy and, really getting meticulous about what's creating those conversions and how you can scale them once you actually find the gold nuggets in your funnels. So yeah, so sort of that's kind of what I'm all about. When it comes to my background, it's quite a patchwork. I used to have my own agency. Um, I worked as a coach and a consultant for a few years as well. So I've worked with a lot of different businesses, large and small, and startups as well. So yes, as long as we're doing SEO and creating conversions, I suppose that's where I'm the happiest.
And it's really your breadth of experience that I feel is really gives you such unique insights. You've worked for clients, you've done marketing for yourself, you've worked for
Yes.
startups, you've done coaching, you've helped other coaches. So you've really kind of done it all in a lot of at least a lot of it. Maybe I guess none of us has done everything, but you've done a lot of different things, and I'm really excited to learn more about how that has informed your approach and all the different things you've learned. And to get started, what I always like to ask when I'm talking to somebody about whether it's ads or content or almost anything marketing, it's what do you do to identify and understand the target audience for your content before you even get started writing anything? Because I think as marketers, we all kind of understand that's really the most important part of all this. Because if you get that wrong and you're writing articles about cats for people who like dogs, you're going to be in trouble.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, so it is absolutely the most important part. And definitely it's also the part that I would give probably the most time out of the whole, if I had to split my time between how long it takes and how to create the strategy, I would say this is definitely the part I would dedicate most time to. And the things I would do are probably different from one business to the other. But it really depends on what information is available. So the first thing I would do if the company has a sales team is definitely go to the frontliners, sit with them, interview them, and get as much information as possible about about all the questions and all the objections that they get, and pick their brains, find out everything about the client. Um, I would normally try and go into every single department the company has. So whether it's customer service, anyone that speaks to the client has got something to say. Even the people who are developing the product, especially when we're talking about tech products or platforms, it's important because these people have a certain, you could call it latent knowledge of the client, and they do have a passion for what they do. They all give you a little piece of the puzzle. And finally, of course, you also have to speak to the clients themselves. That's very, very important. So whether it's maybe you want to start through surveys, and then you want to pick a few key people and actually have long interviews. And, you want to make sure that you definitely get the client side, especially if possible, if you can, when they have just become clients, because they're at a stage where you haven't educated them enough about your product for them to start talking like you. They're still thinking like someone who is going through the buyer journey. If you get them a few weeks later, it's probably too late, because like we every industry has its own jargon, and soon enough the client starts talking like you because you've been educating them by onboarding them. So if you can get them really at that stage, and in fact, a good strategy is to actually have, these little listening tools along the way. So for instance, when a client becomes a client, it's good to send them an onboarding form that has strategic questions that are going to help you identify what made them buy. I mean, obviously, it's you cannot have too many of these questions, but you can slip them into sort of your process, even your customer service sometimes, and sort of make sure that you're picking their brain a little. And and then of course, if you can get them on a call. If you record those, if you have onboarding calls with people, I know that a lot of businesses try to spend as little time as possible. They have a lot of forms and they collect information that way. But getting people on a call and actually recording them, especially in the beginning, when you're building your funnels, making sure that you get a number of clients on these calls, record them, get your marketing people to actually watch them and really start seeing the patterns. Because once you start seeing the pattern, then that's gold. That's what you need. You start seeing the people saying the same words in these different interviews. And and that's when things get exciting, because once you see these patterns, that's the gold you're looking for.
That onboarding form is a great idea. And personally, when I've worked as a consultant, I found that it's really that's the best time really to get people to respond. One of the hardest challenges I've
Mhm.
had is that just getting people to answer those questions. Sometimes you would think I need to have these answers because this is how I'm going to
Mhm.
do the best job for you. But sometimes everybody's busy. They've got their own jobs to do, and it can be hard to get them to do that. But at the beginning, when they've just decided I'm going to hire this person, and everybody is as on board as they're going to get, and as excited about it as they're ever going to get, you can go ahead and say, look, we're going to have a kickoff call, but before the kickoff call, I need you to answer these questions and send them a form, a jot form or type form or whatever, and
That's right.
get them to fill that out. Do you have any tips for making sure that the kinds of questions you're asking are the ones that are really going to get to the information that you need?
Yes. So you want to find out what they were thinking when they bought from you. So you want to understand maybe what they were shopping around for as well. So you want to ask questions like, why did you choose us? What other services were you looking at, or what other products were you looking at? Why did you feel this was right for you? And also what I like to ask is, what was it that made you buy? It's actually quite an open-ended question, but the answers you get to that tend to be quite specific. And very often they'll either refer to a social media post they saw with the value, that you are expressing about your product, or something you said, or something that somebody did during the sales process. So they can be very specific as to what actually gave them that little last push to buy. Usually people can remember that.
Yeah, and that is another area that's very challenging sometimes to get people to tell you that. I know that a lot of times I'll have that on a form, it's like, uh, or something like, "How did you hear about us?" Just a little different, and it's people are
Mm.
like, "The internet, online." Thank you, very very helpful. Well,
Well, yeah. I always ask that question, and that's usually followed by if it was Google, what were you looking for?
Yeah, that's
Which
yeah, you
actually
gotta.
gets them to give me the keyword they found me through. And it's really fun when you have that connected to a graph and you just see your graph growing with the different keywords. It's like it's just becomes really easy to replicate then.
It's funny because a lot these days, a lot of people are, and I think it's because Chris Walker over at Refine Labs, he's a really big LinkedIn uh, presence. And he talks a lot about, he says everybody should have that be an open ended question where they can put anything they want. And, it shouldn't be a drop down
Mhm.
and it should be required. And I know that's how Ahrefs does it and a lot of other places. But sometimes it can be hard if you're not forcing them into certain areas. It's hard to sometimes get them to give you a useful response. But then again, if you force them, then maybe they're just going to pick something random and you're not going to know what it really was. So I guess there's no perfect way, and you've just got to kind of figure out what works best in your case.
Yes, well, I think we just have to do a little bit of selling because it really depends on how you position it. So, if you're trying to collect information about people who are simply booking a free call, maybe there are people along the journey, then you need to give them a reason to fill it in. Okay, don't give them 20 questions, give them 6 questions. But let them know that you're going to use that information to prepare for the call, which is going to make it a more useful use of everyone's time. Or, if it's part of your onboarding form, make it clear what you need the information for so that they have the motivation and the incentive to fill it in. So yes, it does take a little bit of selling to get people to fill in your forms.
That's a great point. It's interesting how when we're thinking about marketing, we understand the importance of, if I'm going to try to get you to buy something, I'm going to try to explain to you why you should give me your information, why you should buy this, uh, and that's what we're going to do. But sometimes when it's just something more simple, like getting somebody to fill out a form, you still, even if all they're spending is their time, you have to convince them that it's worth their time. That's a great point.
Yes, it
Well,
really is.
so to get a little deeper,
Mhm.
what would you say once you understand your audience and you've started to understand what they need and some of their pain points, the kinds of problems they're looking to solve with your product or service, what are some of the best strategies for making sure that your content aligns with those needs and pains?
Yes. So the first and most obvious is to go to keyword research. But what I like to do is I have actually a couple of steps in between. So the first thing would be collecting the information. Once I have that information, I like to actually turn that into a story. And it's very difficult to explain the process to somebody who hasn't done it before, especially like when you're doing it with a client. They're like, well, we're going to turn this into a story. Um, but it's quite interesting how when you turn the information you've collected into a story, it's basically the story of the journey that the client is going to take. And by turning it into a story, you can kind of find, you find holes in the plot. Like, I've got this bit of information is missing. So how do I go from feeling that, I don't know, feeling that my website is not getting enough traffic to actually understanding that SEO might be one of my options. So unless you actually turn it into a story, you're not going to realize that that little step is missing. So that's why I like to turn it into a bit of storytelling. And once you've done that, then it becomes really easy to get this story you've put together and break it down into the 3 stages of the funnel. So, your consideration, your decision stage, and your awareness stage. So when you have the story, it becomes second nature. It's natural because everything is sequential. So the awareness is going to come first, and then, consideration, and then your decision stage.
That's a
And yeah, that's
great
sort of a little secret that kind of really works.
I've never heard that before, and it makes a lot of sense to me because when you think about it, there's no real way to, we've got, people call, you've got awareness, consideration, decision, whatever, no matter how many pieces somebody wants to divide it into, it's never going to fit exactly. And there's always going to be multiple things that happen in each different part. And
Yeah.
if you're just thinking in terms of like awareness, well, that might feel like, okay, well, that's just one thing. And maybe for some businesses it is, if it's like e-commerce, maybe it is. Maybe it's just awareness, consideration, decision. And it's pretty easy to write that story. But if it's something more involved, especially I would think with something B2B, something with a longer sales cycle, if you're not thinking through that story and looking to see if you have any plot holes in your narrative, then you could be totally missing information that you could be providing them to help move them through the funnel and to help show your credibility. But using that idea that's great. So what do you do when it comes to, you've got all these different types of content, and you've got obviously somebody in the awareness stage is, again, depending on what you're selling, probably not going to convert right away. And how do you decide what makes these different stage pieces of content effective? How do you measure uh, their performance?
Yes, that's a very interesting that's a very interesting question. So what I like to do is I like to have a mission statement for all of my content. So you have a mission statement for the whole blog. What's the blog going to do if you're blogging? Obviously it can be many different other different forms of content, but what is sort of your ultimate mission? Now, obviously, the ultimate mission is to sell stuff and make money. We all know that. But what is the content going to do? Is it going to educate? Is it going to, support? Are you going to give them tools? Are you going to, maybe give them insight into the industry with data and statistics? So it does help to start off with an idea of generally what most of your content is going to help your clients with. And then what I like to do is I like to add a little column once we have the content plan that basically says what is the goal of the content for the awareness stage. And usually, if you've done your work properly and you've really separated your personas and you've sort of niched your personas down enough, it becomes quite easy for you to pick a goal for every stage of the funnel. So I'll give you an example. Let's say if we're selling, I don't know, if we're selling a software product, let's say we're selling an accounting product to accountants, obviously, or CFOs in big firms. And in your awareness stage, what you want them to understand, the goal of everything in your awareness stage is going to be to make them aware that maybe using one piece of software that does all the different jobs is going to save them time and it's going to save them money and it's going to make their data more reliable. So you've got this one goal, this one step that you need them to take for them to then kind of qualify for the awareness stage, sorry, for the consideration stage. So that's how you kind of need to think about it. So what is that step that they need to take? What do they need to learn? What is this mindset step that they need to take in order for them to then go to the consideration stage? And that becomes your content goal. And it's not necessarily going to be reflected in the titles or in the keywords, but it will be reflected in the way you write your content. So what you're taking them through when you're actually writing, like the journey of the article.
And is it going to always be something that you can track, like something where if they click here, then I know that it worked? Or is it sometimes going to be something more, I need them to understand this at this point, and maybe there isn't really a great way to track things like that? Or maybe there
Well,
is.
I'll be perfectly honest. I've actually tried this approach, and I find that even people from the awareness stage will actually convert with this approach because they will have this aha moment, and they would think, like, this person, this company knows something I don't. So it is going to get more people to get in touch with you. They're not necessarily going to be 100% ready to buy right now, but they are much more likely to get in touch with you because you have very clearly set this goal to give them this piece of the puzzle that they didn't have. And if you really do make sure that every article you have is going to take them a step closer, every person that reads each article is going to have an aha moment. It's going to take them to that, it's going to give them that little something that they didn't know before. And if you can do that, usually if you then really sort of do a good job of, sort of flowing that, bridging that nicely into the call to action, you will see that more people will actually get in touch. And obviously, they may not be getting in touch to buy right away. They might maybe want to do a demo. They may maybe want to understand better how this can work for their company. But it is that little something that makes people take action.
And do you do anything for the people who maybe they're not ready to actually reach out? Are you do you do things like gated content, or are you, I know now these days the big thing is no, don't gate anything. But do you, is that some a part of your strategy?
Yes, and I don't believe in ungated content. Why would you do that? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, if you have a community and you creating content for the community, great. But why would you do that in a place like social media where the whole point is to get leads, to grow your email list or get them to your website, or, obviously, when people don't gauge their content, what they're really doing is they're taking you to a place where there's a pixel and they're going to show you their ads later. So you are kind of, you're going to get it some way or another. It's just
Right.
a different strategy. But it's obviously much, much safer to get people on your email list. And I know that people are much more precious about it. You're going to get bigger numbers if you just take them to a page on your site and you've got your pixel and you can reach them again. But, I would say you could do both in reality because, people are going to have multiple reasons. If you have good blogs, they're going to go to your website anyway. If you have videos there, they're going to go to your website. So I would say if you are going to bother creating really good content like an ebook or maybe a mini training or something of the sort, I would say yes, gated. And obviously, this is going to get in the way if you have your call to action, if you want people to read or you want people to watch your videos and then take action towards the end. So I think it's very important that you just have, say, like a very discreet pop up as people are leaving the site. So it's just for people who didn't take action. I think that's very important because there's nothing more annoying than being halfway through a blog post and you've got all these pop-ups, and sometimes you're on your phone and the pop-up is wider than the screen and you can't close it. And that just drives people crazy. So at least if you're going to do that to them, do it when they've already decided to leave.
You're so right. And this is the kind of thing that nobody ever wants to say on LinkedIn, for example, because the way that you're going to get people to listen to you on LinkedIn is to say that it's this or it's that. It's black or it's white. And
Yeah.
so they have to say you should only ever do this. If you don't do this, you're wrong. Follow me for more. And but really just the approach you've already been describing is both, because you said you're creating this content that is in a blog so they can get that, and if there's a little more that they can get through giving you their email address, and then of course you still can have a pixel on your website and still retarget them, and you can have the ability to you can even cut up. But a lot of times what I've done is I'll have a lead magnet or something like that, and it's like, yeah, if you want it all in one spot, they can get it there. But then I also, it's cut up and you can get it for free too. I don't say here's all this stuff that I cut up in one spot, but it's
Yeah.
like, here it is, it's over here in this blog post, it's here in this spot. So I'm getting the information out there to everybody, but then I've also got it in this other format, and if they want that, good. In fact, I've even seen, and I always mention this, I've seen a lot of people will convert just to get the exact article they're reading for free. If I'll just say, look, you don't want to read this right now, or you want to just want this as a PDF, fill this out and I'll email it to you. And people will do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I have
you can do
something
both.
similar actually. I have a very long blog post. I think it's practically an ebook. I think it's like 9,000 words. and yes, and there's the form because people, they didn't quite anticipate when they landed on the page that it's going to take them so long to
Yeah.
read. So yeah, that's what they do. There's a PDF version. They can download that and then maybe have a look at it later, or just browse to it at their leisure. But you got their email address. It's yeah, and the email list, you know it's a bit like SEO. It's like emails and SEO. People keep doubting, are they still going to be around, are they still going to be effective? But they really have survived the with all these changes over the years. And I think there are two mediums that we will see a lot of in the future. I think email is actually doing really well right now. And, SEO is changing fast, obviously. There's all these AI things and, the search engines changing. So there's a lot of change happening there as well. But, they're here to stay for sure.
Yeah, nothing ever seems to go away. It seems like just new things pop up. There was at first there was direct mail and then there was email. Well, we've still got
Yeah.
direct mail, and I know personally from people who do direct mail retargeting through lead posts, I know it's still driving results.
Hmm.
And obviously, we see people driving results with email. And you can do the same thing now. People are doing it with text messages. So I
That's
don't
right.
really think that the tactics are ever going to go away, um, barring any kind of data privacy law that I don't think would be
Yeah.
likely to. I don't think we're likely to get anything that would stop people from doing those kinds of things here, as long as you allow people to opt out. But yeah, it's just you have to know how to do it. You have to learn. Things are going to change. The things that are going to be effective are going to change, and you just got to roll with the punches. But I think the real message is, if you're doing this in the real world and it's actually you're marketing for a company, do take all the approaches that make sense. If you're writing about it for a LinkedIn post, pick one and tell everybody that all the other ones are dumb.
No, I don't agree with that. I think actually I say the opposite usually. I think all the strategies work, but not all strategies work for all the business phases, and they don't all work for the goal you're trying to achieve. So you obviously have to be a bit discerning. You have to kind of
That's
find out what the right one is for you. But there's no such thing as a strategy that doesn't work. If the strategy is well placed and it's the right one and it's executed, I'm not saying it's 100%, efficiency. Even, you don't need to do it 100%, but it will still work. Most strategies do work. That's why, like you said, a lot of these things are still around and they're working for people because it's the right thing for them, and they're doing it right. They're putting enough effort. And, I think the difficult thing is when you're doing too many strategies at once. That's where you start thinking strategies don't work because you're not going deep enough into any one strategy. So,
right. Well, and I think that's the true state of things. Unfortunately, it's just not controversial enough to, if you want to get a large following on LinkedIn, you got to just pick something, and you can't worry about the truth. Just have to be very polarizing.
it,
That seems to be social media in general. Whatever the case is, you got to get people arguing in your comments section, or there's not going to be any success there.
yes, well, I used those tricks early in my
Yeah.
career when I used to do a lot of social media in the early days of Facebook, and it used to work so well. It was just. And if you were feeling lazy, all you had to do was like put a typo in there and it go crazy.
I see stuff like that all the time, and I'm like, I think they did that on purpose.
Yeah, some people do.
Clever people out there. Well, so can you tell us about when you've got all these pieces of content, and you've got some of them are geared more towards educating people, and some of them are more bottom of funnel. Let's go ahead and actually drive a sale here. How do you balance the educational content with the sales driven content in a way that's going to effectively nurture your leads, so they're not just thinking, oh, all they want to do is sell me and they're unsubscribing, or you're not pushing them hard enough and when they're ready to buy, they go buy from somebody else?
That's a great question. And my advice is to not sell, always educate. So, because if you try to sell and then you read your own article back out loud, you can hear it, you know. So I think the thing is, especially with your writers, when you sit down to write, it's very important that you're not in the selling mindset, you're in the educational mindset. And then it's fine, obviously, when you come to review it and take a look at the draft, you want to make sure that there's, an important takeaway, and that takeaway is taking them a step closer to buying, and that you have the right call to action, and it's being bridged in a way that it's going to make people take action, and it's highly relevant to everything you've been teaching them in the article. But definitely there's nothing worse than hearing a salesperson's voice in an article you're reading. It's like it really comes through. It feels really forced. And some people some blogs use formulas like that, and it becomes annoying to read. It's like, we don't like being sold to anymore. We can go to Google and buy anything we want anytime. So we don't even like people talking to us like that. And I think this is a very important thing that the internet changed. 20 years ago, they used to teach people to write like university lectures, which is not the skill you need to blog.
Right.
So it's people want to read, and it needs to feel like a conversation. It needs to feel like you're having a conversation with them. And if you had to try and start selling to them in that conversation, they would pull back, because we all do today. That's we don't like being sold to anymore. We've become quite sensitive to it. And the same thing happens with blogs. If you're reading a blog and you start coming across these kind of salesy sentences, you kind of think, And it's so easy to go elsewhere on the internet. It's so easy to just lose a reader. They'll say, oh, just go back to Google the same thing again, find another article. So you do have to be careful, definitely. So always lead with whatever they're looking for. So what the keyword that you're optimizing for is the most important thing. What were they looking for? And this is something that I think is one of those things that maybe people don't think enough about. So what was the intention? What were they really looking for when they looked for this? And it's obviously sometimes you have maybe 2 or 3 different options because it's a bit vague. But if you go long tail enough, usually it's quite clear what they were looking for. And it's really important that the article is going to give them that. And you've got to give them the promise right in the beginning, because if you haven't promised them that they're going to get exactly what they were looking for, they won't even be sure that they want to read the full article.
Well, and for me, some of the ones that work best are when I'm reading it and they tell me what they're going to tell me, and then they even kind of answer my question. and then so I know, okay, I've got the answer, and now they're going to just break it down for me.
That's
So
right.
there's very low risk to me. I know that I'm not going to get to the end, and it's like, now go buy this affiliate product or something like that. Would you say that the when it comes to actually writing these articles, what are the things that are important to do to make them compelling to readers? I think that the number one thing is what you said already, is think about the intent. And unfortunately, as much as I love tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush, I think those are kind of a big reason that people don't think about that anymore, because it's like, I've
Yes.
got these keywords that I need to hit, and I'm just going to write about the keyword. I'm going to see what other people wrote. And they're not thinking about, well, what is the reader really looking for? So
That's right.
what are some things like that that people need to do when they're writing to make sure that these articles they're writing are going to be compelling and convert readers?
That's right. Okay, so the first thing is actually don't think about this when you're writing. So you got to get your ugly first draft out, and then you sort of go through it and you're a bit happier with it. And then like at the third draft, this is where I start thinking, okay, so how am I going to retain people on this page? I know I've given them the right value, but this is where usually you got to go in and you got to really work on your introduction, because what tends to happen, writing is a lot like running. You warm up after a few minutes, and the intro is very much the first thing you write. So usually it's not going to be the best thing you've written, especially if you haven't been writing for an afternoon. So it's very important that you actually go back to your intro once you've done all the writing and really think about what you've written, and sort of obviously if you're a trained copywriter, the different ways of capturing people and maybe finding interesting information to keep people on the page. But it's focusing on not only the copy, but also the layout of the first few lines to make people get through the introduction fast. Statistics show that once people get through the first 5% of the article, they're much more likely to read the rest. So if you can really get them through the intro, that's the secret to keeping them there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that uh, for me personally, that's kind of when I feel like I'm kind of hooked, because it takes me about 5 minutes to decide if
Mhm.
it's worth looking at or not. And well, sometimes it takes 5 seconds. Sometimes I can get in there and I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah, and see, if it takes you 5 seconds, it means it's the intro that did it. If it took you
Yeah,
5 minutes, you've skimmed all the subtitles,
right.
and then you try to decide whether you like it or not. And that's another important point, actually. Subtitles are important for SEO. They're also really important because there are people who will read all the subtitles. They will skim the article and then decide whether to read the whole thing. So it's really important to get your subtitles right as well and get your keywords in there in the right places.
What about call to actions? Are there any tips you have for people on where they should go, how to make them more effective? Uh, Anything on that topic?
Well, so my pet hate is when you have, and I've tried it in the past, so I can say it's my pet hate, but it's not something I've not done. It's like I've tried it too, and I just and it works to some extent. So you can see these call to actions where you have the same image call to action in different places.
Hmm.
It starts off maybe in the first third of the blog, and then you see it again later, and it's always sort of placed in different places on the blog. And I really don't like these call to actions, and I'll tell you why. Because what I've seen from statistics over the years is that you kind of get these are for people who are a little click happy. Let's put it that way. So they're going to get you clicks, but they're not necessarily going to get you conversion. So for instance, if you want people to book a demo call, you might find that people are really clicking on this fancy, pretty call to action button, but they're not actually going through and booking the demo. So what I find to be the most effective call to action is when you actually put your call to action. And I know it can be hard because, we want to have as many call to actions as possible. Put your call to action at the bottom of the article and have a really good transition where you really explain why they should be taking the next stage in a way that's really connected to the article. So for instance, if you're explaining the benefits of CRM in your article, and you've given them maybe some tips on how to make it more efficient, and you want them to jump on a call, for instance, to something that we do, because you want them to talk about how they could actually use the software for their own company, then you need to make sure that you have connected, for instance, the pain points that were the topic of the article to the call to action. So you might say something like, if you're looking for growth, or if you're having problems connecting or aligning your sales and marketing, then we should talk about how this package, or how this particular software can help you do that. So it's got to be really specific, and you really have to make them see clearly if they're going to talk to you, if they're going to fill in a query. They really need to see clearly why they're going to do that as the next step after they've learned what you taught them, because they have that particular pain point. So it really has to follow. And if you do it at the end of the article, you're not going to get the impulsive ones. You're going to get people who really took the time to read the full article. And what that does is it's going to give you much better quality leads. You might get a few less, but you are going to invest your time better, because you're going to be talking to people who are more interested. I can't hear you, Roy. I think you're on silent.
I like to do that sometimes for comic relief. When somebody makes a really good point, I put myself on mute for a little bit, and then we
Okay.
could kind of have a laugh, relieve the tension, of like how. So that was just a brilliant point. I don't do that for everybody, but that was such a good point. I had to mute myself. And so I think that you could even find that with people who maybe they are impulsive and they would have clicked, or for whatever reason, maybe they would have fat fingered it, or for whatever reason, they do click away. And instead of going back and finishing it, they're just like, whatever, and they leave, or they go ahead and fill it out, but they don't show up, they ghost you or whatever. But what you're doing is you're saying, like, you're waiting until the end when you've actually told them everything you're trying to tell them, and gotten to them that point where they're actually educated to really be able to know whether or not they want to convert.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not really getting the full opportunity to persuade them. You're telling them you're telling them a little bit, and then you're saying, do you want to stop reading this? And they say, yeah, let me go see what's going on over here. There's a shiny button. And then they're like, okay, now I'm going to go get on Wikipedia and look up old shows from the 80s, and you never see them again. That's what would happen with me.
Right. And that's why you want to make sure that it's like, you're educating, but you're not a teacher. You're not there for every person in the room. You only care about the ones that really care about what you're saying. The others can drop off. You don't have to, worry about every single person that's reading your blog. What you need to really care about are the ones that are really interested, the ones that really have the problem.
And that's the nice thing about being a marketer. I think sometimes we take that for granted. My wife was a teacher. She's an assistant principal now. And, they can't leave any kid behind. Even if the kid isn't interested at all, they have to try to win them over and teach them. And I like that if somebody doesn't want what I'm marketing, I can just say, okay, bye. That's fine.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I would do if I was a teacher. If a kid didn't want to learn, I'd say, go to the playground, go play. We'll be in here doing math. Well, so what I have to ask you, this is just a question that is just mandatory these days. When it comes to content, what do you think about AI, tools like ChatGPT? In my experience, and maybe yours, it sounds like some people have different tactics. I know I've talked to somebody on the podcast who had some ways to get good content out of tools like ChatGPT, or at least better than you get just right off the bat with it. In my experience, it's not really creating anything that's ready for prime time. But do you find that has it helped you? Is there any way that you've used it in your strategy, or is that something you just hadn't felt the need to really mess with too much yet?
Well, I've actually run a lot of experiments over the last year. And in the beginning, we were all worried because Google was saying, it's not going to index AI content and it's going to treat it as spam. And then the content started improving. I think what really matters is that you really follow the EAT quality
Mhm.
quality guidelines. And when you start looking at the quality guidelines, you realize that one of the most important things is that your content has is not like all the content out there. And this is a key problem because you go to ChatGPT and you ask, or even the good ones, I've tried also some expensive content tools,
Mhm.
but all they're doing is ultimately regurgitating what's on the first page of Google for that keyword. So you really need to be aware of this. I didn't keep using them because I found that it was really killing the creativity. It was really killing the quality when you start off with these tools. Then I tried a different strategy where I tried to get the tools to help me plan the article. Didn't work so well either. I found that actually, I found that quite killed the creativity anyway, because I would have tackled the article in a different way. I can tell you a couple of things that did work though. So what I find that really works is I do my own outline or plan, and then if I'm a little bit, say, lost, but sometimes you maybe you don't have such a strong argument. So what I like to do is, for instance, I like to go to ChatGPT and find out what the counter arguments to my topic would be. So get them to challenge me so that I can write a better article. And I sometimes ask them sort of where I can find good research about that particular topic. And it will give me a list of sites where people have done research. I ask for places where I can find reliable statistics. So I'm actually using ChatGPT to put much more value into my article. At the same time, though, what really helps is um, in the end, after I have already written it and after I have sort of used ChatGPT to uplevel my article by giving me different perspectives, then I will also ask it the question which a lot of people would ask as the first thing. So put in your title and see what ChatGPT writes. And what it's writing is basically what's already out there. And what's already out there, because it is very likely getting articles that are already ranking highly on Google, these are sort of the common themes that Google is ranking. So although it's not going to rank probably much more because they're all the same, if you have something that's already better, but then you add that to it, then you've got something really good. So I do it the lazy way. So I will first ask it to write an article, and then I will say, get this article and turn it into FAQs. And I turn that into an FAQ section because I don't want that stuff in my article. I don't write like that. I don't want to write maybe about topics that are going to bore my reader. So if I had to, maybe, let's say, I don't know, let's say we're talking about content and everyone's talking about, I don't know, content with ChatGPT. Maybe I don't want that in my article because everyone's talking about it. So I want to take a different slant. And I usually do. I usually want to take people down a different journey. But with this, what happens is that you still have those topics in your articles, into your article in your FAQ section, and you're kind of separating it.
You're
But it's still
covering
there.
all your bases. You're
Yes. And it's
creating
still,
a that is really, I've not heard of anybody else doing that. And both of those things, I think using it to get other perspectives and to make sure that you're really covering everything, but in the way that you want to cover it, uh, but not missing anything as far as what real people might be wondering about. And then when it comes to all the algorithmic stuff that you want to just touch the base or check the box, you're putting that in an FAQ section.
Mhm. That's right.
Genius.
And you can do that with old articles as well. So if you're up leveling old articles, you can literally just go into your old article. You can get your title. You can ask ChatGPT to write an article about it and then turn that into FAQs and just pop that at the bottom of your article. And then you've up leveled it in 5 minutes.
That is awesome. Well, so can you tell us a little bit more about 9H Digital?
Okay, so 9H Digital is a creative tech agency. So we do creative, and we also do a lot of tech. We sell some products like HubSpot and ERP systems, and we also build APIs and sort of take it all the way sort of to the other end. So we do UI and UX, and we also do branding. So we're sort of doing sort of the full digital marketing sphere. We're pretty big on SEO and PPC as well, as you probably realized already. And yes, and we're based in 3 countries, but pretty much, we have clients a little bit everywhere.
And what kind of companies do you usually work with?
So we work with companies that are either getting ready for growth, or they're already growing and they want to sustain that growth. So growth is the word for us. We like growth strategies, and we like helping companies, especially with the technology side, helping them, become resilient enough so that they can scale. Because I think these are 2 things where marketing and technology become really important together. You cannot start marketing and getting in all these leads if you don't have your people and your systems and your tech in place, because otherwise you're gonna break your systems. So these 2 things really go hand in hand. And of course, there's people who are preempting. Some of our clients are at the stage where they're preempting, they're getting ready to scale. So, they're making sure everything is ready, because one of the most important things as well is to remove your silos and to have data visibility. Because, you cannot sort of plan to grow if you don't have access to data and you're not understanding how your marketing is working. So it all really goes hand in hand. And of course, it also goes hand in hand with how strong is your brand, especially, if you're going global. Maybe you were in a couple of countries and now you're really opening up. Sort of, how does your brand sit next to your in the new competitive sphere you're going into? So
Would you
it's
say that that's a specialty since you do have a
Mhm.
footprint in multiple countries, is that sort of global strategy a strength?
What is I would call it export strategy. Yes, there's a lot of international business here.
Mm.
So definitely that's something that is always on people's minds. There are a lot of international companies who come here, and then there's a lot of companies who set up here and, want to go bigger. So definitely our business footprint is way bigger than it should be for the size of the island. We're just naturally that kind of place. And of course, we also have an office in KSA in Saudi Arabia, and we also have quite a lot of employees in Egypt. So we have another
Awesome.
office there. So yes, so it's and we're already looking at a new country, but I won't give you information about that yet, because it's
So
very
you're not
early.
just growing other people's, even your agency is growing.
Yes,
Growth
definitely.
is the name of the game for y'all.
That's right. And that's the game, and it's we're passionate about it. I mean, our CEO is very passionate about it. He's a very fast growth driver. That's his blueprint, that's his fingerprint. And then it automatically sort of reverberates across everything we do, and it has become the core of the value that we give our clients.
Well, so is there any place that people can go to follow you to get more of your insights, or are those things you just keep locked up for your company?
No, we do give insights, and it's not just the CEO, and it's not just sort of, we have a team of experts. We have our growth team. We have a lot of expertise, and we are beginning to share more of it through content, for sure. So definitely worth checking out and worth following. If you can find us on LinkedIn, of course, you can find us on Instagram. If you want to follow us on social media, or you can go to our website, which is 9hdigital.com. And you can drop us a line if you want to talk to any if you want to talk to us about anything related to tech or creative, or maybe you're planning for growth and you want the support of a creative team that's also pretty good with tech.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I've been doing content for so long that it is very nice and always exciting to find somebody who can teach me something new. So, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Roy. It's been an absolute pleasure.